Hopefully the steps for long division of polynomials remind you of when you learned how to do long division with regular numbers. So let's take a look at the process we're going to use for long division, and hopefully the cute little phrase off to the right-hand side helps you remember the 4 steps. So you'll notice off to the right, I have the question, does McDonald's sell burgers? Well, if you can remember that little question, does McDonald's sell burgers, then you can remember the acronym for the steps you need to follow. Divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. DMSB. So those 4 steps, repeated loop after loop after loop, is all you need to know in order to do long division. Now, sometimes you only might need to do 1 or 2 loops. Sometimes you might need 3 loops. It just depends on the types of polynomials you're given. In this particular problem, we're going to go through the DMSB once, 1 full time, and then we're going to loop around and do it 1 more full time. So we're going to do 2 complete cycles. All right, let's take a look and see it in action. So the first thing we want to do is look at some vocabulary words. The main polynomial, in this case, the 2 minus 29x plus 28x squared, is called the dividend. And then the polynomial we are dividing by, the 4x minus 3, that is called our divisor. So when you set up your long division problem, you start by writing the divisor, and then you write your long division sign, which should seem familiar to you. It's the same symbol as when you learned how to do long division of regular numbers. And then underneath the long division sign, you write the dividend. Notice I'm writing the dividend in the order of the highest exponent to the lowest exponent of the variable. So I'm rewriting the dividend as 28x squared minus 29x plus 2. It's very important that you rewrite your dividend in descending powers of the variable. Okay, so I had to rewrite it as 28x squared minus 29x plus 2. All right, now that we have our division problem set up properly, we can start going through our 4 steps. Does McDonald's sell burgers? We will start with the step for divide. So we're going to take the first term of the dividend and we're going to divide it by the first term of the divisor. So we're doing 28x squared divided by 4x. 28 divided by 4 is 7, and x squared over x gives me x. So 7x is what I get after I divide those first 2 terms. Now, that 7x is going to become part of my quotient, which is going to become part of my final answer. But I want to line it up over its like term. So notice how I'm writing 7x on top of the 29x, because they are like terms. All right, so I've done step D for divide. Now I'm ready to do step M for multiply. So the term 7x is going to get multiplied by my divisor 4x minus 3. So I will distribute 7x, and I'm going to get 28x squared minus 21x. And then what I do is I write that underneath my dividend, again, lining up the like terms. So 28x squared minus 21x gets written under my dividend, and now I'm ready for step S, which is to subtract. So you want to think of this as 2 binomials right now. So if you look under the subtraction step, it's like the binomial 28x squared minus 29x. Those are the first 2 terms from the dividend. From those 2 terms, I'm going to subtract the other binomial, which is 28x squared minus 21x. So notice how I put parentheses around that second binomial so I can distribute the negative sign. So I get 28x squared minus 29x minus 28x squared plus 21x. And then when I combine like terms, I see the 28x squared cancels out the negative 28x squared. And then I add my x terms together for negative 8x. Now, if you go back and look in your long division problem where you have it set up on the left side of the screen, you can also just change your signs and add straight down. So the subtraction sign becomes an addition sign, and then you're adding the opposite of the terms inside the parentheses. So notice how I made the 28x squared become negative 28x squared, and then I turned the minus 21x into plus 21x. Now, if I combine like terms vertically, you'll see that the 28x squareds cancel out, and then negative 29x plus 21x gives me the negative 8x. Okay. My last step, B, I'm ready to bring down the constant value 2. So all I did there for bring down was literally just bring down the constant value of 2. All right, so now I have to loop it around one more time. So like I said, this is like a loop. So I'm going to go back up to step D again for divide, but now I'm starting with the negative 8x in my new binomial, the negative 8x plus 2. So now I'm dividing negative 8x by 4x. So negative 8 divided by 4 is minus 2, and the x's will cancel out. So notice how I've put minus 2 up with my quotient. So now my quotient is 7x minus 2. And now I'm going to go to step M for multiply. The negative 2 is going to get multiplied or distributed to my divisor. So negative 2 times 4x is negative 8x, and negative 2 times negative 3 gives me plus 6. And notice how I write that underneath the binomial negative 8x plus 2, being careful that I'm lining up the like terms. Okay, now I'm ready for step S, which is subtract. So I have the binomial negative 8x plus 2, and from that, I'm going to subtract the binomial negative 8x plus 6. This is where you add the opposite of the terms. So the subtraction sign becomes a plus, negative 8x becomes plus 8x, and plus 6 becomes negative 6. And then you combine like terms in a vertical fashion. So negative 8x plus 8x will cancel out, and positive 2 plus negative 6 when I go vertically gives me negative 4. And since I have no more terms left to bring down, I'm done with my loop. I don't need to go through the DMSB anymore. I'm done, and negative 4 is now my remainder. So let's see how we write our final answer. So I'm going to write the quotient 7x minus 2, but then for the remainder, I have to put minus 4 over the divisor, which is 4x minus 3. And then that is how I express my final answer. 7x minus 2 minus 4 over 4x minus 3. So what that means is the binomial 4x minus 3 is not an even factor of the original dividend because there's a divisor. Because there's a remainder. So it means the binomial 4x minus 3 does not factor evenly into the original dividend. And that's okay. Sometimes that will happen. And we'll see that later on in the unit of the importance of having a remainder other than 0, or what it means when your remainder is 0. But for now, we're just remembering the steps of long division. Okay, we always want to check our work. So this 7x minus 2 piece of our final answer is the quotient. And if you notice when it says check your work, you take your quotient, you multiply it by the divisor, then you add in any remainder that you had, and that should equal your original dividend. And that's how you know if you've done your work correctly. So I'm going to take my quotient 7x minus 2. I'm going to multiply it by the divisor 4x minus 3, and then I'm going to add the remainder of negative 4, which is just like subtracting 4. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply those binomials, and then I'm going to subtract 4. And if I get my original dividend as my answer for my check, then I know I've completed the problem correctly. So again, let's just label these. 7x minus 2 is the quotient, 4x minus 3 was the divisor, and then I'm going to add in the remainder. So I want to multiply my binomials. So 7x times 4x is 28x squared. Then when I continue to distribute, I'm going to get negative 21x minus 8x. So I'm going to add my middle terms in the middle. That's negative 29x. And then my last two terms, negative 2 times negative 3 is plus 6. But don't forget to minus the 4 for the remainder. So I'm going to combine like terms, plus 6 minus 4. So when I finish combining like terms, I will get 28x squared minus 29x plus 2. And that checks out because that matches my original dividend. So I know that my final answer that I put in the blue box, 7x minus 2 minus 4 over 4x plus 3, minus 4 over 4x minus 3. I know that is in fact the correct answer to this long division problem.